In this episode of The Business of E-commerce, I talk with Caitlin Burke about e-commerce customer acquisition. This is The Business of E-commerce, episode 24. Welcome to The Business of E-commerce, the podcast that helps e-commerce retailers start, launch, and grow their e-commerce business. I'm your host, Charles Pileski. I'm here today with Caitlin Burke. Caitlin is the Senior Manager of Acquisition Marketing at MailPal. Caitlin is an expert in customer acquisition, so I wanted to invite her on the show to talk about some ways listeners can improve their customer acquisition. So, hey Caitlin, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. So, I wanted to kind of chat a little about customer acquisition. What is your role at MailPal? What do you kind of do there, I guess, to start off?
Yeah, so it's a fairly new role for me. I've been here for about a month, and I was really brought on to grow our new customer base. So I manage our organic growth from a PR perspective, but also our paid growth from a digital and offline perspective. So that includes everything, retargeting, programmatic, affiliate, things we're looking to grow and build, but also on the ground marketing, like flyering, lunch and learns, and really growing like a refer a friend program here in order to get new customers.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. You don't hear of the offline marketing so much in this world, so that's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
And as far as online, you said like retargeting, and what else? What are some other things you kind of do there?
Yeah, so actually we're fairly new in terms of our digital landscape. We've only been around for 2 years, but I was brought on to kind of help build this out. So really thinking about the future. Right now, majority of our spend's going through Facebook from a digital perspective
Yep.
and Instagram, but looking to build out, various channels. I think there's opportunity. It's challenging from an affiliate perspective on a local level, but I think there is opportunity. I think SEO is really important, especially from a local level, because having local landing pages really helps from a search perspective, but also programmatic display testing out and just other, retargeting opportunities that now search is available, and even Bing.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I feel like Bing's the kind of the forgotten child, but it's still
It's funny because it is the forgotten child, but I think it still makes about 30% of search volume.
Yep.
And when I was doing performance at Bonobos, it was amazing for return on ad spend.
I hear that all the time, and so few people talk about it. It's one of those things that I think people first, actually now Facebook almost seems like it's kind of the new hot thing, and we're hearing less about AdWords. But then all of a sudden now Bing kind of dropped down another level. Is that kind of what you're seeing, or?
Yeah, I mean, like for Bing, it's such an easy setup because you just import your AdWords through Bing,
Yep.
essentially, and then like reformat it so that's for Bing. And so there's no reason not to do it. To me, it's like a low level of spend and a low level effort, and you get the return back pretty easily there. I think Facebook, fell off the map for a couple of years. I remember when I was doing performance a couple of years ago, like Facebook just wasn't working, but they've done so much improvement. And, I've seen Facebook at my last job work really, really well. I think it's up to the brand, it depends on your customer. Our customer is definitely reacting to Facebook, and we have the opportunity, especially with food, and it's so visual, especially like Instagram and Facebook are really great opportunities for us.
Yeah, I feel like Instagram is kind of the new the very new thing. I was talking to someone the other day, not in this world, and kind of mentioned, oh, where'd you get that new hat or something like that? They go,
Yeah.
I bought this on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so people not in this world actually are like using Instagram as to make their purchasing decisions, which is very interesting. Is that kind of what you're finding, or?
Yeah, I think food and clothing do really well on Instagram,
Yeah.
right? Like I do most of my clothing shopping from Instagram ads. I will tell you that I find out about new brands. I would say like some probably struggle depending on what the brand is, but there's a great opportunity to have a different voice on Instagram. And I also think there's a little bit of a more positive attitude on Instagram than sometimes that you see like than Twitter or Facebook. And so there's the visual aspect of things being beautiful. Video is so compelling on Instagram, and people feel like that feed is so much intimate.
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm definitely seeing the engagements, right, are a lot more. It feels like if you kind of fit into that Instagram paradigm, where people are kind of on their search and just kind of looking at photos, videos, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know how much people are direct clicking. So I know that, of course, there's like the tags for the clothing, and you can click to the actual shopping experience, but it's definitely a way to get your brand out there and figure out how to drive people to your website.
And now, yeah, you saying this is more of a branding type thing, or more of an actual, get products in the shopping cart and close sales, or both?
I think it's both. I just think that it's less clickbaity.
Mm.
There's so much opportunity to engage people, but I think at the end of the day, people are probably searching.
So actually still searching, you're saying Google and Bing
So
for
like
actual.
I see a brand on Instagram and I'm really interested and I'm either clicking on their profile to go to their website, or I'm just going to search the brand on my mobile device in another browser.
Interesting. So basically, you need to kind of be on all these different platforms for that exact reason.
Yeah, I think it's really important. People might be hitting that sign up button, but they also might just think about you later, right? Like we have to understand that the path to conversion is not isolated. So, that idea of that last touch being the most influential, a lot of brands, including MailPal, because we're early on, are on that last touch. But I've worked with a very comprehensive attribution model in the past where you see the impact of conversion over time and what that path actually looks like. One particular channel that I feel really strongly about that is affiliate. So affiliate is set up to be a last click channel, essentially, right? Like I'm in my basket and I want a coupon code and I'm going to affiliate channels to get them. The Retail Me Nots, the Ebates of the world. That's wonderful. But when you realize that 30% of your traffic was already in cart before they even got there,
Yep.
that last click feels less important to me.
Yeah.
And so it's super important to figure out what are driving people to your site from the top, and not just thinking about that recency effect, because that doesn't make any sense.
What are some good ways to actually track that? Because when you can, I feel like the last touch is possible. You see that kind of shows up in all the, that's easy to track. But where do you know where the customer actually started their kind of journey from? Or is there a
Yes.
better way of doing that?
Yeah, it depends. So, offline channels are obviously much harder to track.
Yeah.
I always think about them in isolation in terms of there's a couple ways of measuring the impact of those traffic lifts, creating, look-alike city tests if you're doing out of home. How did you hear about surveys are very tuned in to how people are actually feeling. So in my Bonobos experience, we turned on podcasts because people said they heard about Bonobos from podcasts and we weren't even spending on it. So we knew that our audience was telling us, oh, we heard you. We heard hosts being interested about your brand. And so we ended up turning it on because of that. And you will see that spike. And obviously it's directional, because it's just people emitting. But what's better than the source itself telling you how they heard about you?
And that's all from asking them directly. Because something
Yes.
like a podcast, you can't track that. It's
Well, you could track with promo codes,
yeah.
but the way that people work today is they're typically not going from podcast to site typing in a promo code. They're probably experiencing a bunch of different ads, and at a certain level of spend offline, you actually can see efficiencies in your funnel. So if you spend a decent amount of money, you'll see your search become more efficient. You'll see your Facebook become more efficient because those people, you basically call it softening the funnel.
Yep. So they heard
Right?
about you on a podcast, but now they're
Right.
seeing
I
you
heard about
again
you
and
somewhere
again.
else. And so I already have higher intent by the time I get to your digital channels. So those just seem to start working better. But you do have to spend a decent amount of money to get there. From tracking multiple people across the internet, I mean, obviously basic UTM tracking across all your digital channels is super important. And then track touches, right? I always think about tracking. People are all about the click. Some channels are not click, worthy. I say like programmatic display. Like no one would invest in programmatic display if they only went for clicks.
Yep.
So what I always recommend is creating some kind of attribution on a view to click level. So if you want to do 3 views for every click, or 50% view in a shortened attribution window versus 100% for click. And that way you're taking into account the visual aspects of your brand as well.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. I want to make sure we kind of understand everything there. When you say UTM tracking, can you define that? Let's start off there.
Sure. So unique tracking method. So when you have a business, you create, that slang of alphanumeric code at the end of your URL that helps you track internally. So, source, where you're getting it from, medium, the channel, and then your campaign content. Is it an ad for a discount? Is it an ad for a particular visual aspect? That's super important to set up. And most platforms on a digital basis have a place to put they call it mostly a final URL, which is when I click on an ad that, unbeknownst to the most consumers, there's all these alphanumeric things that come after mealpal.com, and that allows me to know you clicked on this Facebook ad.
Yep. And this thing's even like, I think Google has a tool, right? So you can actually generate those UTM, all the options, and they plug right into analytics.
Totally. So if you don't have an internal tech team, engineers who are working on this, Google does have a very easy way to create these automated. You just type in and they actually create the UTM tracking for you. It's very easy. And they make it super easy that you can track, clicks across all of their platforms. So that's basic, very important consumer acquisition tool to make sure that you know where your customers are coming from.
Yep.
For attribution level, it's really important that you think about your channel. So you want to think about your channels across channel, but also in isolation. So when I was talking about, the attribution, for example, at MealPal, we think about attribution for Facebook different than we think about search. And that's because Facebook has different aspects of it. It has a visual aspect. There's a creative aspect. There's someone looking at their feed. And so we think about, one day view attribution, meaning I saw an ad in one day and I came and I converted. We'll give that 50% of the credit because that's a recency effect of understanding, okay, someone probably saw this ad and came. Something must be there. But for click, we say 7 days or 30 days because that's an intent that we're able to track better. And that's at 100%.
Because if you're talking click, that's somebody is actively thinking about MealPal. We want something right now. So they're seeking you out. Versus on Facebook, and kind of the difference, right, when you're thinking about advertising, is Facebook, you're not actually thinking about you guys right now. You're just kind of scrolling through your feed. And they kind of see something. And it might trigger something in their head, but they might not. They might be, on the bus, maybe at a red light, something like that, and they're not ready to actually engage. But they might come back and then search for it, like you said, 3 days later.
Right. But that's why the window of the attribution is so important. Like 1 day is such a short window that we feel like that's pretty high intent. If you saw an ad and you came the same day, you probably likely saw that ad. If we expanded that window to 30 days, maybe you didn't see that ad and it just, you scrolled past it. So that recency window for something like that on a view level is very important.
So you're really trying to use that to make sure this ad related to this search, related to this checkout, and really so you can map it through. So it wasn't just a random, you blew past the ad and happened to see a flyer sort of thing or something random somewhere else.
I was going to say, we actually, have different tracking methods we have, we call them friendly URLs, which is essentially a vanity URL that's like mealpal.com/flyering. And, we hand them out with different codes and we track flyering through that. Now, there's an aspect of flyering on the streets, literally like handing out flyers, and that is not trackable. Like I might hand someone a flyer, they might not ever use that URL, but they may go to MealPal. And so, but the awareness or the brand being out there in the world, that lives on. And so there's always that kind of balance between how do I judge conversion one-to-one and how do I judge the impact over long term of being visually available.
And how do you actually see that branding kind of fit into this? Because like you said, you're handing out flyers. There is an ROI, you just don't know what it is. So how do you kind of fit that into this puzzle of, down to the Facebook level where you're tracking pixels and understanding, this ad, a 1 day conversion? Like, how do you fit in? How do you say, how much do we justify on passing off flyers and doing these other things that we can't track?
Yeah, so once again, it goes back to that how did you hear about us survey? And we see on the back end, people say, I heard about you from a flyer. And, maybe only 50% of them actually use the URL in the flyer. but there's like a multiplier, right? So you can extrapolate if all new customers, only a certain number of new customers will fill out your survey. And it's a post-checkout survey saying, how did you hear about MealPal? And here are the 6 choices. And, just say 20% of your customers fill that out. There's kind of that, wanting to believe that if all customers fill it out, I can multiply this number out and extrapolate it and then see that as my return. It's not a perfect science, and no marketer can tell you it's a perfect science, but it's important, and it's a leading indicator that something's working, right? So that's like one big way when it comes to like flyering. I would say if you have bigger media, like an out of home or TV, you will see that in your traffic, right?
Yep.
Flyering will not cause huge spikes in traffic. It's just not going to. But like a big, takeover of a city, you might see a lift. And, 2 ways to look at that is you can do it on a zip code level. If it's static media, that's like street furniture or whatever.
Yep.
Or if it's like system-wide trains, like very popular in New York City where I am, you can do it like as a lift of the whole city based on what you expected to happen, predictably, and then what actually happened. So there's like a baseline of growth from pre and post, and you see the lift.
So you're looking at here, here's our numbers over average, this month, last year, last month type of thing. And then all of a sudden we saw something. So there has to be that differential is basically the lift you're talking about, that you would say, we ran this thing we can't track, but we can see there's a differential. So in the same time period.
Yeah, and it's challenging because if you're a big brand, you're running a lot of things at once.
Yep.
I always recommend if you can test in isolation just in a couple cities, it's very important. So like you have a baseline, if you're a national brand, which I've worked in a few of them, like, baseline across your national landscape, you do X, but like by pop in a city, okay, then I can attribute that. When you have a local brand like I do now, you can do potentially like a lookalike city. Like these 2 cities anticipate similar growth patterns. How did I accelerate the growth in one versus the other when you think about offline attribution?
Now, is that something people could even do that? So, you right now you're running in a very geographical type thing. So like you can do that because you have to, because it's per city. So that. Is that something, even if you weren't, could you kind of force that and do a particular thing in a city just to kind of, and then watch that one city and see how that reacts versus, the control?
Totally. So I did this at my last company, Box, which is a national online wholesale club. And we did out of home in Boston, and we did a takeover of the city. And we saw that certain percentage lift over our baseline growth. And we were a national landscape. So you can definitely isolate city experiences from an out of home perspective to do that. I will say on a TV perspective, though, your cost per 1,000 impressions, your CPM, will be very expensive on a local level. But it may be worth the test if you have to get, your buy-in from your senior leadership.
Okay, so if you're saying let's just target Boston as a small target area, run that test, the CPM is going to be much higher, right? Because you're paying, you're now paying just for Boston. But then once you say this works, now let's roll it out on a broader scale, and that's when your CPMs drop. But hopefully you can kind of say, we're going to get the same boost we did in Boston as we will in every other city. So, and the cost will drop.
Right. There's a short term, so it's basically almost 3x on TV to do it locally. And so it's like, how big of an investment do you want to make? Because you could go nationally first and it may fail. Yep. And so you spent the national landscape. Local is a great way to, test the waters, but it is a more expensive test. So you just have to weigh what you're looking for.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually, the way you kind of isolate that and then kind of extrapolate and understand, okay, if we did this in this one city, even though we paid 3 times the price, we're going to get the same result, but now at, 1/3 of that cost. And same results though.
And it's really important. I would say like a lot of the stuff that I talk about, data is always super important, but creative is just as important because like a bad ad could ruin your performance, right? Like we should never take away from the fact that creative, it should be thought about very thoroughly. A lot of things that we test here is if we're going to invest in outdoor ads, we test our taglines on Facebook before
Okay.
we go out with them, or we set up focus groups and ask them, how do you feel about these ads? Because it's a very expensive mistake to make.
Yes, when you go into actually, printing real things in real life, it costs money. But on Facebook, right, you could test uh, many variations and kind of start to get an understanding. Is that something? How many variations do you actually test on a typical campaign? I'm assuming it varies, but
I would say about 5 is a good basis for creative and taglines, especially we call them high dwell situations. So when you're on like a subway system, you're in a high dwell experience where you're sitting there and engaged. It's very important that whatever you have on that ad keeps the attention of your rider, right? They're on their commute, they're tired, it's crowded. If you could bring a little light into their day, that really makes an impact. And you can see now in the New York City subway systems, there is, we call them branded trains everywhere for all the big startups because it's like a way to get in front of millions of people in New York City and have their attention for 30 minutes. They can't go anywhere. So.
yeah, I remember even more so back in the day before smartphones, you would literally sit on the train and those little ads on the side. You would just, you don't want to awkwardly stare at the person across from you, so you stare at the ad. For your whole train ride, you were just, if you forgot your newspaper, you were just staring at that ad, and that was it.
Right.
Yep. Interesting. What are some things you kind of found from doing this that were surprising with the creatives? Because I feel like sometimes you run these tests and, you think this is the one that's going to work, and we're sure of it, and then you run it, and that's like the worst performing one possible. Do you kind of have those moments still, or have you got a better sense of this?
Yeah. So one thing I learned about this role in general is that something that works for one business does not work for another. I've worked in 4 different startups now across different local e-commerce, services. 2 very similar ones. I did work at Seamless for 4 years, and like what works for one does not work for the other.
Yep.
And even best practices don't always translate as you go along. So even as a seasoned marketer of doing this almost 9 years, like I have to retest all my knowledge every time.
Well, and it's a moment in time as well too, right? Because it's
totally
different year, different
technology
season.
Is different. Yep. Things that back when I was at Seamless, that was the early days. We did branded trains, and we were like the only ones with street easy and Manhattan storage. Now every train is filled, right? So there's less attention because people have seen it for the last 8 years. Same thing I mentioned before with Facebook. Like 5 years ago, Facebook wasn't working for me as a performance marketer. Now it's one of my lead channels. And so same thing with affiliate. So affiliate for, local is much harder than national because it's easier to find publishers on a national level than a local level. And affiliate was one channel at Box that we used a lot because people were buying, toilet paper and people wanted discounts on CPG products. So it's a different mindset at every company, and you have to retest every time to make sure it works for that one.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely a very good recommendation because I feel like each time I've gone through this process, it's every time you kind of learn and say, oh, wow, this is actually different than last time. And every single time, it's unique to this, like you said, the situation and even the moment in time. So.
Yep, totally.
What are some things? So we have a lot of smaller listeners too. Maybe they're just getting started or kind of at the, beginning stage of this. What are some kind of tips people could actually take and apply on the small level to their business, folks that are kind of just getting started or just kind of dipping their toe in the water for the first time?
Yeah, I think 2 easy ones to get started with are Facebook and search. And so Google search, make sure, and this is for anyone who has a blog. You don't even have to have a business. If you just want to have a blog or maybe you have a LinkedIn page, a Medium page, it's super important that your people are finding you, right? That you're relevant. And so my tip is, one, put your name on your blog or your pages as much as you can because Google tracks that and scrolls down your page and how relevant you are.
Your personal name or your business name?
The business name, relevant keywords to your business.
Yep.
That's why people have reviews on their site, because it allows people, that makes Google more efficient. So that's why Amazon is so good, because people are talking about products. So when they search a product name, Amazon comes up for free.
Yep.
But in terms of paid search, it's very low level spend to turn on paid search, basically paid ads on Google and Bing if you want. You could, even a big brand could only be paying a couple $1,000s a month for it. But what's important about that, and people are like, why would I pay for my own brand when people are searching me for free?
Yep.
The reason why is because you don't want competitors bidding on your terms.
I've had that happen before, and it's
right.
You search your own company name, and all of a sudden, see, well, there's actually ads above my above my organic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's such a low lift and spend that it's not worth your competitor just outbidding you for your own terms. And Google will actually, if you have your own terms and you are the business, will prioritize you over your competitor.
Okay.
They'll make it more expensive for them to do so because you are more relevant to their customer.
Very, very good one to know.
Yeah. So it's like more of a defense than anything. Because I've been asked, well, why are we spending on search when what? Because you should always. I think Facebook is a great one only because, one, like I said, Facebook has done so much improvement on their targeting. There's so much options. They're getting so smarter with their algorithm, but also it's very friendly on the business manager to manage it. Like, you don't need a 4-year marketing degree to do Facebook. There's so many tutorials online. Sometimes, like myself, I even go on YouTube and look at some tutorial videos if I don't know something. There's so much content about how-tos for Facebook that, you just need the basics of knowing what audience you want to target, and Facebook will tell you what that ends up being. They'll calculate it for you. And then building out, your creative. Like I said, creative is super important.
Yep. Now, you talk about Facebook when you say, so first, when you talk about Google, we're talking about search and not display, correct? So
I'm sorry, you broke up.
When we're talking about Google, this, you're saying don't do anything with display initially. Start off with just search, your own terms, and kind of display is a different beast altogether. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
GDN or any of the programmatic display vendors, I would say wait.
Yep. Yes.
Only because it's more expensive, and also going back to the conversation we had earlier about the tracking, it's less clickbaity. So if you don't have a sophisticated attribution model to understand the view perspective, if you're like a new business and you're just trying to get off the ground, it's going to be very difficult to understand the overall picture of it.
I hear that a lot. The GDN, Google Display Network, you can spend a lot. You can spend a little per click, but it can spend a lot fast. It's a mega network, and the spend can go up there quite quick. So I definitely, that's a good one. Definitely kind of, if you're starting off, go with search. And I like how you said just kind of the basic terms about your own business, because it's low hanging fruit, right? And you can target that. You know those terms. Like, you don't need to, come up with them. Company name and a couple different variations. So it's easy to kind of pinpoint those.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And also, obviously, negative keywords, make sure that you're not bidding on things that are relevant or adding misspellings. People think about just your nature as a person when you're typing in Google. How many times do you misspell something when you're typing? You want to bid on those terms.
Yep. And I've noticed things like, for instance, our company name, Spark Shipping. There's Spark Space Shipping, and then one word, Spark Shipping, and even kind of like a hyphenated thing. So there's a lot of different things like that you can bid on, all those different versions of it. So
yeah.
But then when you talk about Facebook, are you talking about targeting cold audiences initially, or going with some sort of retargeting to start off?
I always think starting off with retargeting is a great way to start from a low level, because people have high intent. So if someone comes to MealPal and visits, that person already showed some intent, so it should be cheaper to get them in the door. So when you're looking at a CPA, a cost per new customer, or a return on ad spend, which you can look at either one, you're going to see better efficiencies there. You should set your KPIs lower from a perspective, like, you don't want to be spending the same for a customer of high intent than you did from bringing someone new off the street. But you should start with retargeting, and there's easy settings in Business Manager where you could say, retarget anyone who's visited my site in the last 14 days
Yep.
or 30 days. And, see how that goes. What will happen eventually is you have to fill the funnel, right? So I call it, you have to put people in the funnel in order for the funnel to work.
Yeah, if you have no one on your site, you have no one to retarget, right? So your retargeting on it be pretty pretty sad of, if it's only 100 people. So you want to do something, right? So what is that
there
something?
has to be some awareness that you're driving.
Yep.
Whether it's PR, which is also like there are agencies that are not that expensive to hire for a new business to just get your brand out there. But it's very important that if you have Google search and you have retargeting on Facebook, you need to be filling the funnel with awareness tactics.
Yep. And awareness when you say fill in the funnel, typically cheaper, right, at that point, because, you're bringing kind of the masses to the site. Well, hopefully a bit targeted, but cheaper on a kind of a cost per click basis. But then the retargeting is kind of more expensive because it's highly targeted at that point.
Yeah, it depends. So what you should see is that your retargeting will actually become more efficient because you're converting more. There may be more people, the volume may be bigger that you're spending, but the efficiency should get better because you're putting more people available. Eventually, there's a point where you're so broad that it might get less efficient because you're appealing to people who have no interest in your brand.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
So as you move up the funnel, it becomes more. If you put a TV ad out there, people might visit your site that have no intent, but they just want to discover you. So you will see that. But if you're in the right awareness channels for your brand, you will see retargeting become more efficient, actually.
So if you're targeting the right people at the top of the funnel, your retargeting starts to become more and more efficient down kind of as you go.
Right, and that's different for every brand. At Box, it was moms, 30 to 45 who wanted to stock up in bulk. Here, I have a younger customer who's eating lunch every day from their office. Very, very different customer, and different channels that work to get to them.
So you need to figure out kind of, after you get your retargeting going, then figure out those kind of top of the funnel. Where are those customers actually sitting and living, and how do you actually get to them, get them to go to the site, kind of view it for the first time, check it out, and then that's where your retargeting starts to become more efficient. You've brought that, person eating lunch at their desk, now they're kind of getting retargeted on Facebook, then you can actually kind of bring them and close the sale at that point.
Yeah, and Facebook allows it super easily, right? So you can set up retargeting as your first step. Now you start converting people. You have a base of customers, right? So you create a custom audience list of those customers and upload it to Facebook and say, Facebook, please find people who look just like these great customers and find more of them.
Yep.
And send them to my website because I already know that these people are great because they converted on my site. And you can parse that out, with high value customers, people who are spending a lot on your site, people on a subscription model, people who are staying month after month. And then you can parse it out and say, hey, Facebook, find people like this and funnel them. And that's how retargeting becomes more efficient, right? Because now you're finding your best customers and you're filling the funnel with your best kind of customer.
So using a lookalike audience to actually, have Facebook then find those customers and starting the awareness that way.
Right. And it's in the same platform, right? And Facebook's always so smart because they're retargeting people, so they know exactly the way in the algorithm to target the new people as well.
Yeah, that's the thing in Ad Manager in Facebook. There's things you can tag, right? Age, location, gender, that sort of thing. But internally in Facebook, when you create the lookalike audience, they know everything about you. So maybe you have access to 10 data points. They have access to 100, let's say. So they know so much more about you, and they know those people actually checked out. Now you generate that audience, and now they're able to then use all that other data that you don't have access to on, do you like a lot of pages? Do you watch a lot of videos on, just what kind of things you actually do? And you as an advertiser don't have access to that, but Facebook does, and they can do that very effectively, it seems like.
Right. Every time you log in to an app with your Facebook account, they have all that information. So they know more about you than we'll ever want them to know.
Yep.
But also, they have access to all kinds of targeting. They know what pages you like, what articles you read. And so, some very sophisticated brands, I have a golden doodle puppy. I could see golden doodle ads on Facebook because they know exactly what kind of dog I have because of the kind of content I ingest, right? And those, it's scary, but it works as like a relevancy.
It's scary, but the nice part is too, you're not seeing ads for random things you don't like. So there's another side of the coin where, yeah, you see the golden doodle ads, but you're not seeing ads for, something that you don't have any interest in, which,
Totally.
Go back 10 years ago and you would see these display ads for random things that had nothing to do with you. But now, at least with Facebook, you're seeing ads that you might actually have an interest in. So that part has kind of been the nice thing about this whole creepy tracking that that's taking place nowadays.
Yeah, right. As a marketer, we really like it.
Yep.
I hear from my friends all the time, they're like, you know too much about me. And it's true. I could tell you your path to conversion from the moment you started, to the finishing point of all the tracking. And it's scary, but it works from a personalization. So I think that's like the big next topic, which has been on the mind of everyone, is that people don't want to be treated like anyone else anymore.
Yep.
And so something that I'm hoping to build here is understanding source and interest, and then how do we handle that from an email perspective, right? So we collect leads on our sites. When you come to our site, it asks you for your email and your zip code so that we can give you an experience of your city, because our plans are different. We have international cities. We're in 16 cities across the world. So I don't want to show someone in London US prices, or Paris, I want it in French. I don't want it in English. And so eventually we'll be able to get to a point where, we're tracking our source. This person came through this source, and I know that they saw this ad. And so therefore onboard them in a certain way versus this customer. That seems more relevant.
Okay. So even start getting down at this point to, after the conversion or after at least a sign up of email, and start really kind of talking to them in their language and things they can kind of associate with and understand.
Yeah, imagine I, put a vegetarian ad out there, right? My husband's a pescatarian. He doesn't eat meat.
Yep, good example.
If I sent him a email with like 15 great looking burgers, that's not going to appeal to him from what he's interested in. That's not a value prop to him. But I can give him 15 salads and fish options, and that really does appeal to him. And that may not appeal to someone else who doesn't want that. A good-looking burger is not appealing to everyone. So it's really important that we think about the visuals that we're giving, and what is the messaging.
And starting with all that data you're collecting through the kind of sign-up process, pulling that down and actually now associating that with an email, with a user, with an individual person, and then market to them, and keep that relationship with them based on things that actually have to do with them, like you said. So showing them pictures of salads instead of meat in that case, and not just through Facebook retargeting, but actually down into your email list and kind of campaigns.
Yeah, because email's so important for us. I can only drive in so many good leads, but then my email team needs to take it from there, right? Yep. Like I can send quality traffic to our site, but it's up to the messaging and how you're onboarded into the platform and how we explain our value prop to you that actually gets you to sign up.
All right, that's definitely a good I think a good tip right there, and something probably maybe we'll do that in another podcast actually. Because I have a feeling in the next few years that's going to be kind of the new thing we start seeing of personalization at kind of a deeper level with your audience, like you said, email and that sort of thing. So that's definitely I think a good place to wrap it up right there.
Great.
Yeah. If people want to get in touch with you or kind of learn some more, or what do you recommend people do from here?
People can ask me questions. I'm super open at Caitlin@mealpal.com. I'm always looking to chat about business and acquisition marketing. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm under Caitlin Burke. I assume you'll spell my name out for them.
You will add that in the show notes. Yes.
Yeah. But, I've been in a lot of startups, mature startups and early startups. And so can give a lot of recommendations on like early stage things. And then also, once you feel like you've exhausted your early stage things, what to move on to.
Awesome. All right. That was super helpful, Caitlin. I'll definitely add that in the show notes. And that was, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.